Autoline at CES is brought to you by Borg Warner, Intrepid Control Systems, and by Gentex.
Hi, John McElroy here, talking all things automotive. Today I'm talking with Glen DeVos. He's the CEO of a company called Microvision. You guys have come out with a very low-cost LiDAR system. You got it right here in your hand. It's not one of those spinning doohickey things that you see on the roof. Tell us about this.
No, this is Movia S. It's our short-range, wide field of view, solid-state LiDAR.
Movia S is
Movia
that's
S.
the trade name of this.
That's the trade name, Movia S.
Okay.
And it's a full solid-state LiDAR that does 180 by 135 degree field of view, 30 to 50 meter range. So it's a great sensor for short range, like things like self-parking, vulnerable road user detection for automotive, industrial applications, as well as mapping on drones.
Yeah, and so, but the big thing that caught my eye is the cost.
Yep.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, we're really targeting by 2029 for automotive, that's our initial target, is really to be down below $200 per sensor. So a significant cost reduction from where we are today with LiDAR. However, we also know we got to do better than that in the future. Really, for mass adoption, we need to get this down to about $100 a sensor.
Right, but Glenn, one of the key things too is you told me you're launching at a $200 cost, not once you've made millions and millions of these things.
Yes, that's right. The thought that, hey, price comes down with volume is actually a bit backwards. Volume comes with price. And for automotive applications, you have to be at a price point where the OEMs can afford to put it on the car and not just a premium option for a premium vehicle. It has to be able to go on kind of the value segment vehicles. For that to be the case, it has to be lower cost. And that's really been one of the big, really stumbling blocks with LiDAR over the past years. It's too expensive to put on, the mainstream vehicles. It's on those really high-end premium vehicles. And so for us, it's about driving the costs down, delivering the right performance at the right price, so the OEM can put it on a value segment vehicle.
Right. So others, notably Elon Musk, has said you don't need LiDAR. I think one of the reasons he cited that was the cost issue. Does this overcome that then?
Well, I think it helps, but I think, Tesla is using a very vision-centric perception system strategy. So to bolt LiDAR onto that, it may not work for them. That's fine. The bulk of the OEMs really are using multimodal, and that's radar, that's vision, and LiDAR. So they're looking at a different architecture where LiDAR fits in very nicely, but it has to be at the right cost.
Mm-hmm. What's the advantages of LiDAR over just a pure vision system then?
So really, there's nothing better than LiDAR for doing object measurement, so 3D mapping of the area around you, free space detection, calculating relative velocities. LiDAR really does an amazing job at that. So for precision mapping of the environment around the vehicle, LiDAR is your best bet.
What about things like fog, snow, rain, darkness?
So LiDAR lighting conditions really don't affect it. As you get into fog, depending on the how much fog or how much rain is there, it'll have some degradation, but we really can operate in fog and rain. So it's very complementary. If you think about how those those weather conditions may influence vision systems, lighting in particular, or snow and fog, those conditions may interrupt vision. LiDAR doesn't have that. So LiDAR, radar, and vision really complement each other.
Every time I look at what's going on in China, I see there's multiple car companies putting LiDAR units in right now. Outside of China, not so much. Yeah. How do you keep pace with the Chinese?
Well, that's not a new phenomena. We have to always be competitive with Chinese suppliers. It's great to see what's happening in the China market with those vehicles because they're doing things with LiDAR and they're driving adoption. And eventually, that puts pressure on the North American and the European market as well for LiDAR adoption and having those same features. So it's actually good for the LiDAR industry as a whole. We know, though, we have to be competitive with Chinese suppliers, and that's always been the case, which means we can't simply compete on hardware. We have to be competitive on software and doing things in a way that really gives the OEM more value.
Mm-hmm. There's, as you know, legislation, regulation in the United States right now. You can't use any kind of Chinese technology in cars that has any kind of connectivity.
Yeah.
Are you making these in China, or were you making them? How do you keep pace cost-wise, especially if you're not?
No, today we make them in France at our plant there. We'll make them in Thailand. We also have the ability to do low volume here in the U.S. in Redmond. So we're very careful. Redmond, Washington. So we're very thoughtful about where do we place our PMLs. It's hard to predict the geopolitical winds and which way they'll blow. But at the end of the day, we have really great capability, access to great capability in Thailand and in those areas where microelectronics manufacturing is a real strength. But it's something that we look at very carefully to make sure that we're not going to have market restrictions on our products.
You mentioned commercial and security/defense. Talk a little quickly, the commercial applications, where would this be used?
So the industrial automation is really taking off now, and there's two areas for that this sensor is a perfect fit. The first is with fully autonomous forklifts or AGVs and AMRs, where it's a very compact, low power sensor that gives them an amazing view of the warehouse or the operating environment. If you think about it, great application for short range.
But now you come back to the cost too, right? Because they're already using electromechanical LiDAR.
Yeah, very expensive, multi-thousands of dollars in sensors. This can come in well below $1,000 for an industrial application. It has a system and chip inside of it, so you can put all the processing for the ADAS performance in the chip. But the other area that's really interesting and is new that's coming up is industrial ADAS. So you think about forklifts that are manually driven today. When you look at those applications, really safety systems have been just too expensive. And now this offers them at a very affordable cost, put that on to provide ADAS to manually driven forklifts, tuggers, all of those types of devices. So that's another growth area in industrial applications.
And military defense, security?
Security and defense autonomy is really coming up. So the need for sensors, in particular US or European made sensors, is increasing significantly. What's really exciting is I can take this sensor, put it in a drone, and basically extend the perception system of an automated vehicle that's operating off-road, so they can see navigable terrain well beyond the line of sight for the onboard sensors.
So they launch a drone, it goes ahead, it sees the terrain, wires all that info back.
It does the real-time processing of the map and determines navigability of the terrain, provides that back to the vehicle or a ground-based station for an operator, so they can see what's happening well beyond what the sensors on the vehicle can see. If you're operating off-road, that's incredibly important. If you think about a conflicted area, very dynamic, you want to see what you're going into. So we think it has a great application for extending the perception system of those automated vehicles, as well as for just real-time mapping in general in drones.
Right. One of the things that you had mentioned earlier before we started the interview is that for a mapping, it's not as you can. What I'm trying to say here is you don't have to navigate by GPS if you've got one of these on board, and so you're not going to be as affected by jamming.
That's right. If you think about drones today, one of the denied environment countermeasures is fiber optic cables. So there's a lot of issues associated with that. With this sensor, I can actually do the localization in the drone. I can see and map the ground. I can localize using SLAM basically to a map I already have in the drone. So I can navigate in denied areas, whether it's GPS or it's RF denial. By having this sensor on board, doing the real-time mapping, it basically can localize and self-navigate. So I don't need a fiber optic cable. I can send the drone off. It can find its way to the target area or to the area of interest and navigate its way back.
Okay, back to automotive. One last point. One thing that you had said that I thought was very interesting, as an automaker, I can take all your software and integrate it into my system, or you'll say, no, just if you want to use your software, go ahead too.
Yeah, we call that the open software framework. And basically, to be honest, I took a page out of my history doing powertrain electronics and infotainment systems, and all the work we had done with automakers. And essentially, as an OEM, you want the ability to understand the software and the products that you're putting onto your vehicle, but also have the ability to put either your software into that product, or take the software out and do whatever you want and really understand what's inside of this, what would be a black box. And that's what Open Software Framework is all about. It gives the OEM and the system integrator full visibility and access to what's inside. Now, when you have a system-on-chip processor in here, it also gives you access to processing capability. So it really extends the capability of their system as well. And we think, as I mentioned before, you got to differentiate in more than just hardware. This is how we differentiate with our Open Software Framework.
Great. Glen, thanks for your time.
You're very welcome. Great to talk.